we're going to talk about international law. Some people are going to say that international law is an oxymoron, a contradiction in terms. There's no such thing. But we're going to find that there's actually a pretty thick web of international law, and we want to talk about what it means and how it might shape international politics. So we'll start with an example. In November 2019, the United States government announced that it was reversing a position that it held for a long time. The position was that Israel's settlements in the West Bank violated international law. The U.S. had held since 1967, when Israel, after the 1967 war, occupied the chunk of territory known as the West Bank. The United States has held that that occupation of that territory was illegal, and that therefore building settlements on it was also illegal. And as I said, in 2019, the U.S. said, changed our mind, it's legal. The question I want to ask, I don't want to dig any further into that question, but the question I want to ask is this, what difference does it make? What difference does it make if the U.S. says this conduct is legal or illegal? Or more broadly, what difference does it make if any conduct in international politics is called legal or illegal? What does that mean? Related question then is, does international law matter? And I'm going to contend that the question, as I framed it, although it's one that's often asked, is too simple. The question really is, how does international law matter? Or to put it differently, when does it matter a lot and when does it matter not so much? Part of this question of how and when and how much it matters comes down to the question of enforceability, right? How is international law enforceable? And if not, how can it be called law, right? We think of law enforcement as being an essential part of the process of law. And this gets us into a long-standing set of debates about the distinctions between international law and domestic law. And much of this question about whether we should think of international law as law turns on this comparison or contrast between international law and domestic law. Another question I want to ask is this question of, is international law fair? Which is also a question that comes up in domestic law. Does international law protect the weak from the strong, or does it only protect the strong? We're gonna take a bit of a look at that critique. And then the last question we're going to look at in this discussion is, what is the relationship between international law and international ethics, right? Presumably, law exists to help people or constrain people, right, to do things that are good and to not do things that are bad. So in some fundamental way, law is always wrapped up in questions of what we think is acceptable, ethical, and unethical. And we want to investigate that as well. So with that, by way of a brief introduction, I'll stop here and we'll jump into the next question in the next video.